I'm Jessica Minton for IB Times TV, and joining me today is Robert Sutton, who's a Stanford professor and New York Times best-selling author, to talk about his new book, Scaling Up Excellence. Now, it's so great having you here with us today.
It's great to be here.
Now, we are celebrating Facebook's 10th anniversary, and I can't believe it's been 10 years. It's amazing. When it comes to scaling, what exactly is it, and how are organizations using it, like Facebook?
Well, for us, what scaling is you got a little bit of goodness, you want more of it. So that's one of the most universal leadership skills, whether you're leading a little group or you're leading a giant organization. And if you look at the history of Facebook, Mark started out leading a little group, now he's leading a giant organization. And in Facebook's case, one of the things that's really struck us, as we know about their frenetic growth, I mean, some weeks, because we've been following them for years, 3-4 million users, just craziness, and having to add all these engineers. They have never lost sight from the very beginning that especially every engineer and product developer that comes in, they have got to instill a mindset, not just grow the footprint. That's one of the key things about scaling, and they don't lose sight of that. Even though other things, they'll move fast and break things as their motto, that's part of their mindset. So that's one thing that I've always really admired about them. And it started out as just Mark going around and talking to everybody, and now it's a system they call boot camp, where you spend 6 weeks, even before you know what your job is, doing 12 or 13 different jobs, and actually making changes in the Facebook site you can show your mom and dad, as they would put it.
Now, how exactly does Facebook scaling compare to Yahoo and Starbucks?
Well, Starbucks is different, because Starbucks you're doing chains, so you're replicating chains, and in that case, it's sort of like stamping out products that are a little bit more consistent. They may have to, I mean, Starbucks in Malaysia are different than they are in New York, so you might have to do a little local customization and the like. But I think the Yahoo Facebook comparison is a better comparison, because in the case of Yahoo, I think, and Yahoo's, they're in our backyard, there's buildings all over me that are donated by people from Yahoo and stuff. They lost sight of sort of who their core was, and the way we would put it, and this is very important when you're a leader and you're trying to spread and sustain excellence, what is sacred for us and what is taboo? And one thing that should have been sacred for them, frankly, is user experience and lack of complexity. And they completely lost track of that in terms of how they, and what they do is, in the old days, remember, Yahoo had zillions of different places, it'd be completely confusing. And Facebook has been pretty good about keeping things pretty simple, except maybe some of the privacy settings could be more simple. Have you ever tried to change some of those? But to me, that's a really big difference, is in organizations, what's sacred or what's taboo, people keep their focus on it. And Starbucks is interesting because, and Howard Schultz wrote a book about this called Onward, they lost sight of what really mattered to them, which was the customer experience in coffee. And now they're sort of bringing that back. And they're reinventing it for the modern age so we can use our devices and the like. But they're an organization that has sort of lost its soul and is now sort of bringing it back. I'll tell you, Marissa Mayer, she's very smart. I've met Marissa 3 or 4 times. She's got a tough job. What's sacred for one organization might be taboo to another, but it's sort of like, who are we? It's like an identity crisis. So I'll give you secrecy. So at Apple, secrecy is sacred. We have an open source company like Mozilla, which does Firefox browser. Their secrecy is taboo. So it just depends who you are. So to me, that's a really important part. Another part that really comes from Facebook, and they really highlight, is they scaled faster than just about anyone, but they always knew when to slow down and think. So in about 2008, I was actually doing some consulting to the then head of HR, Chris Cox. He's now head of product. And they would slow down and think about, who is the ideal Facebook employee for us? And it was somebody who wouldn't just be selfish for themselves, who understood the platform as a whole, who wasn't afraid to ask for help, to give for help, wasn't afraid to try something and have it break. I mean, and those elements are still in the culture. And there's a great expression I love about great bosses in general, which is sometimes the best advice is, don't do something, just stand there. And go back to Chris Cox, he still gives the introductory speech to just about every new Facebook employee in Menlo Park. Chris and Mark too, they've always known when to slow down now so they can scale faster later. And so this idea of being frenetic is, I think, the wrong move. Just because things happen fast doesn't mean people aren't actually thinking.
And finally, where do you think Facebook goes from now with their scaling?
So the thing I worry about Facebook, I believe they will continue to be a great company, but you actually don't know, because at one point I might have answered that about America Online, for example. And because the advantage are they're sort of one big integrated thing. The disadvantage is when everybody leaves, they have no other product to sell you. So that's the challenge. And way back, it's interesting, I remember Chris Cox, the aforementioned Chris Cox, who sits next to Zuckerberg, even sat next to Zuckerberg when they went and saw the Facebook movie. Mark, by the way, reported that the T-shirts were exactly perfect, not other parts. So, but I remember Chris saying, we were talking to him about the Facebook location issue, and Chris asked me a question, which was, can you name me one company that does great innovation in more than one place? So you Pixar, you look at Apple, actually Netflix, which is a current darling, they all insist in doing their real creative work. Google too, really almost everything creative happens in Mountain View still. And so for Facebook and a lot of those tech companies, and this is a scaling problem, is they might be able to get bigger and bigger and do most of the creative work in Menlo Park, where they're actually located on the old Sun campus. But the question is, can we replicate the creative work somewhere else? General Electric's actually an example of a company that has been able to do that, but there are not a lot of organizations that have been able to do that.